I'm Anil Kumar. Welcome to my series on statistics. We'll discuss how to read box and whisker plots. 3 relevant questions from previous test papers are being shared. I hope you'll benefit from these. Question number 1. The following box and whisker plot summarizes the results of a test out of 100. Complete the following statements. A. The middle half of the class scored between dash and dash. B. The range of the data is what? C. The top 25% scored at least how much? And D is the lowest mark was what? You can directly read the information and write your answer. Here is question number 2. The following box and whisker plot shows the number of text messages sent by students in a school on a particular day. A. Determine the interquartile range. B. One student sent K messages where K is greater than 11. Given that K is an outlier, determine the least value of K. Here is question number 3. The following box and whisker plot shows the marks obtained by boys and girls in a math test. Compare the information and write your observations. So that is for boys, this is for girls. First question here is, label the plots showing lowest score, lower quartile, median, upper quartile and highest score. Question B is, compare the distribution of each data set in context. So now you can pause the video, answer this question, and then look into my suggestions. Let's look into their solutions one by one. Here is the first one. In question number 1, we have these 4. So the values, let me write down. The lowest value here is 20. Then we have this number as 30. Here we are showing this as 62. This is 70. And that is 90. Okay. So with reference to these numbers, we are going to answer all the questions. A. The middle half of the class scored between what? When we are saying middle half, we want to show between 30 and 70, right? So this is the middle half. So the answer here is from 30 to 70. Clear? The next one is the range of the data is what? Now when you want to write the range, in that case, we are actually considering from the highest to lowest. So this is range. So in this case, the range is from 90 minus 20, which is 70. Now the question here is, the top 25% scored at least what? Now this is the bottom 25, this is the middle 50%, and that is the top 25%, right? So this is your top 25%. So when they say at least what, so the least mark here is 70. This is top 25%, right? So least means on the left side, correct? The last question here is, the lowest mark was, so that was 20, so this is the lowest mark, correct? So in any box and whisker plot, there are 5 very important things. Lowest, right? So let me write down. So we have 5 important things. One is the lowest, then we have the highest, then we have first quartile, this is median or sometimes referred to as second quartile, and then we have third quartile. Why? Anything in between which we represent as this particular data, middle half of this gives you interquartile range. So that is your interquartile range, right? Now these are important informations which are always there. So I hope that is absolutely clear, right? So now let's move on to the second question. Second question here is, the following box and whisker plot shows the number of text messages sent by students in a school on a particular day, right? So first question here is, determine the interquartile range. So what is interquartile range? It is a difference between Q3 and Q1. So interquartile range is, so this is your Q1 and that is Q3. So when we say interquartile range, we'll say Q3 minus Q1. So in our case, it is 11 minus 4, which is 7. So in our case, the interquartile range is 7. Clear? Now, part B is, one student sent k messages where k is greater than 1, right? So on this side, given that k is an outlier, determine the least value of k. So, how do you find an outlier from the given information? So whenever we are talking about outliers, we are comparing the value which is 1.5 times interquartile range. So that value plus or minus. So that is what outliers are. So in our case, the interquartile range is 7, right? So what is 1.5 times 7? That is what we are looking into, right? So basically, we are looking into 1.5 times 7. 7 means half of 7. So that would be 7 plus 3.5, correct? So which gives you a value of 10.5. Is it okay? So when we say one student sent k messages where k is greater than 11, that means we are on this side, correct? Greater than 11. Given that k is an outlier, that means it has to be 11 plus 10.5. Is that clear? So that gives you 21.5. Now see, when we are talking about messages, we cannot send half a message, so that has to be rounded up to 22 messages. Does it make sense? So therefore, the answer for B is 22. Is that clear? So remember, outlier is calculated as 1.5 times the interquartile range. So we could have outliers on the right side and even on the lower side, right? So in this case, we were asking for k greater than 11, so it is on the right side, and number of messages cannot be a fraction, so we round it to a higher number. Is that clear, right? Now, we have already covered very important aspects. Here is the summary. Question number 3, you need to compare the two box and whisker plots. Now you need to utilize all the vocabulary learned so that you could actually explain the two boxes clearly and also compare them. So whenever we are comparing box and whisker, we have to plot them on the same scale, right? So that has been done already for you. So let's read the question once again. The following box and whisker plot shows the marks obtained by boys and girls in a math test. Compare the information and write your observations. So it seems that the marks are from 100. So let's assume that. Now let's write down some values. So as far as the boys are concerned, the lowest value seems to be around 17, right? So this seems to be 17, that is 20. Quartile 1 is around 40, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 44. The middle value here is 52. and Q3 is around 66. Okay. And the highest mark seems to be 92. Right. So these are the marks for the boys. As far as the girls are concerned, the values for the girls are, this lowest value seems to be 12, and then here we have 40. The middle seems to be 43. Q3 is 52, and the highest mark is 95. So those are for the girls. Now we have these values. Let us compare them. Part A is label the plots showing the lowest score, lower quartile, median, upper quartile, and highest score. Well, that we did, right? So you just need to write down the title if you need to. So this is the lowest score, right? Here we have first quartile, this is the median, this is third quartile, and that is the highest score. Okay, for both we have done the part A. Part B is compare the distribution of each data set in context. So that is kind of very important. So what are the good points which you could say? Well, clearly, you can see that the bulk of the boys did better than the girls. That's absolutely clear from this data. So that is the 50% of the boys. So you could compare and then say that. Now, whenever you're trying to compare, it is better to use the technical terms and then write down the description, right? So this block here represents the most representative half, right? So what we see here is that the most representative half of boys scored higher than the most represented half of girls, right? So that is one good point. So we're looking at the interquartile, this region. This is wider, right? And therefore, we can write down here that most represented, half, because this is half. This is 25%, half and 25%, right? So most represented half of boys did better than the most representative, it should have been, half of the girls. Right? So that is as seen from interquartile range. Right? So from interquartile range, you can clearly see that most of the boys, they did far better. This half did far better, and it's on the right side, right? So that is why it is far better. Correct? You could also observe from here that the minimum and the maximum marks were scored by the girls, right? So we could say lowest and highest marks. And highest. Correct, because that is the lowest and this is the highest, right? Now you'll also observe that this block is smaller. That means the representative 50% of the girls were more consistent. So we can say, since interquartile range is lower, right? So we say smaller or interquartile range represents that girls were more consistent than boys. Is it clear? So that is very important, right? So another important thing which you also observe here is that the median is 52 for boys. On the other hand, Q3 is 52, right? So from here you could say that let me use 75% girls scored less than 52%, and 50% boys scored less than 52%, right? So that's a huge difference. So that marks 50% of the boys, right? So 50% of the boys scored less than 52%. On the other hand, 75%, because this is Q3 for girls, correct? So 75% girls scored less than 52% marks, right? So that is very clear from here. So these are the kind of observations which you can make and explain from the given data, right? And of course, you can say that the total range for boys is lesser than that of the girls. You could say, so let me add the last point here. We'll write here total range for boys. You can actually calculate the range and then write down 92 minus 17 is lesser than girls, that of girls, right? I'm writing in short 95 minus 12, correct? So that is how you could actually compare the two and describe them. So we have to relate them with the technical terms, especially the 5 lowest terms, quartiles, median, interquartile range with links Q3 and Q1, the highest marks. Perfect. So if you kind of answer like this, you can probably get full marks. I hope that helps. Feel free to write your comment, share your views, and if you like and subscribe to my videos, that'd be great. Thanks for watching and all the best.